Hello makers, I'm Catherine Harris with SHEERSTITCHERY, and this week I have another unboxing for Thread Crate. So let's head on over to the sewing table and see what's inside this month. So when we go to open the box for April's Thread Crate, it has a lot of really pretty paper this month. I think it's really stepped up a lot in terms of when it first transpired to where we are now. I believe this marks about the 6-month mark for Thread Crate. So it's still a fairly new subscription box, and it has made leaps and bounds in how it is presented and what is all included. And this month there are a ton of great goodies. So first up, when I open it, I see the card for the pattern for this month. So we can see that it is the Sonia Estop's Catherine dress. And my name is Catherine, spelled slightly different, but how cool is that? And I also wanted to mention that this has a code to download the pattern digitally, which is where you will get all the instructions for you to print at home. But later in the box, as we dig down further, you will see that there is an AO copy shop version of the pattern included in the box, so you don't have to send it out or tape together about 1 million pieces of paper when you're doing this. It's all just nice and ready for you. So next up, we have the little brochure pamphlet that will tell us exactly what is in this month's crate and give a little description on everything in case you had any questions on what was included. Now, also included in that is the little brochure for the card to store your fabric swatches, and you get that each month, so you can really just continue to store up all of those neat little fabric swatches each time. Now, the first goodie that I have is this electric seam ripper. And as I'm recording this, I haven't tried it out yet, but I will insert a clip of me using it and my review of how I think it goes. So for our experiment, we are going to go and see how this seam ripper works on the new fancy electric one versus my personal favorite, the razor blade, and then the old trusty traditional seam ripper. So let's start with our new fancy gadget, the electric seam ripper. Now, it's a little bit hard to get started here, but once you actually get it started, I am blown away at how easily and quickly it's ripping out these serged seams. So I thought I would use a serged seam just because it makes it a little bit more difficult to unpick those seams, and it's coming apart fantastically. And the great thing is it doesn't damage your fabric at all. Next up, we have the razor blade, which slices very beautifully and easily, but if you're not careful, you could slice yourself or your fabric. And then the old trusty seam ripper. Now, traditionally, you're supposed to use the seam ripper with this little red dot pointed downwards. That being said, in order to unpick this, I really need to use the point of my seam ripper to get in there. So I am just going in there and picking it apart, and it is slow moving, and you can also damage your fabric. So verdict is, I actually really like my new electric seam ripper. Next up, we have this mug. Now, this mug is from a previous crate that I had. When mine was delivered, it was just smashed to smithereens because the lovely postal office did not treat it with care, even though there were many fragile stickers on. Now, I do know that Thread Crate has changed providers in who they use to distribute the boxes, especially when going internationally, which my box is coming to Canada from the US, and it is phenomenal. Number one, they are much quicker. They literally get it out like within about a week of them distributing them. So I get mine maybe a few days after the people in the US are getting them, whereas before I would get it nearly a month after. So it's just leaps and bounds there. As well, I've noticed that my stuff, like this beautiful cup, has not been smashed to smithereens. It is completely intact, and I am loving this new provider that they have. It's just absolutely great, and I'm so excited to try a cup of tea in my new cup. Now, the next thing that we have is this stay tape, which is fantastic to use, especially when you're hemming knits because they can move a lot. Really what this tape is great for is you just fuse up your hem and it just holds everything in place and it makes it so much easier. You don't have to use your clips, and it's a nice little hack for a lot of things. Next up, we have some matching thread, and my thread matches perfectly to my fabric in this crate. And then we have a little pouch that contains a number of goodies. Now, these are a pair of really pretty floral blue tweezers, and I always have a number of different tweezers in my sewing space, especially when using your serger, because I find you're always needing to pull them out. And fun tip, when I use my cover stitch machine, I actually like to use my tweezers to pull the threads out, as opposed to doing the like forwards and backwards and forwards again on the hand wheel to loosen up those threads before you pull your fabric out. I am able to just lift up my presser foot and use my tweezers to pull the thread, clip them, and then it just releases. It saves me so much time. It's less fiddly, and I love having tweezers nearby. Next up, we have some really cute little pins included in the pouch, and they have little heads like buttons, and I think these are super cute and would also look really cute in little photo shoots that you're doing for Instagram. If you like to stage some of your photos, you can add these in because they are a great little sewing decor piece that I think is really cute. Next up, we have a ballpoint or jersey needle that is included, and we get one with every single project so that we are using, number one, the correct needle for our sewing project, as well as a new needle, because you do need to change your needle about every sewing project. Good rule of thumb is about every 8 hours of sewing, you need to change those needles. And don't forget about your serger needles as well. If you're having issues with sewing some of your really slinky fabrics on your serger and you're finding that tension looks wrong, maybe try changing out your needles to ballpoint needles, as they tend to come with universal needles when you first get them, and people often forget to change those needles on their serger. You do need to change them in both your sewing machine and your serger, so this is great to have in your stash. And next up, we have this really cute t-shirt. It is in a unisex size, and it is the Thread Crate logo, and I think it would be really cute just knotted up and worn around. That being said, I heard that Gertie from Charm Patterns is coming out with a t-shirt hack on how you can look at hacking some of these big tees that you have, and I'm almost wondering if I should try to do that with this tee. I'll have to do some research. Maybe she's already released that. If she has, I will leave a link to her video and tutorial on how to do that. If not, I will add it in after the fact once that tutorial comes up. And next up, we have the printed pattern. As I had mentioned, it is an AO version of the pattern, which I find incredibly helpful because you are not having to print it out yourself. And I think it is a really good value in a subscription box to actually have that physical pattern included. And as I had mentioned before, this month's pattern is the Sonia Estops dress, and I will leave a link to the tutorial up here. As well, I will show you this dress here. So this dress has a number of different options that you can choose, from a scoop neck through to a V-neck. You can choose an empire waist, which is a little bit higher, or your natural waist. And then you have a couple of sleeve options, this flutter sleeve option that I chose, as well as a long, sort of more bishop sleeve that is gathered, and it has an A-line skirt to it. And next up, we have our fabric, and in this month's crate, it is a modal. So it is a medium weight knit with 4-way stretch, and it is 93% modal and 7% spandex with a 60-inch width and a weight of 200 GSM. Now, I got the ivory colorway, and so this fabric is very sheer. And what I decided to do, simply because I did have the ivory colorway and it would be literally see-through if I did it in just a single layer of fabric, even though the pattern it doesn't call for a lining, I decided to double this up. And so I basically interlined it with it itself. So I didn't create a lining so much as I doubled up the fabric and treated it as one pattern piece in the bodice as well as the skirt options. Now, the great thing about this is it also creates a little bit of forgiveness in terms of how slinky it is. Because with this really slinky fabric, if you have any sort of weight or rolls anywhere, you're going to see everything. Even if you're wearing completely seamless panties and undergarments, you're going to see it. It hugs every single curve. So by doing that, it enables me to have a little bit more flexibility in terms of it not showing absolutely everything. As well, it is no longer see-through. Now, because they give you usually over 3 meters of fabric in the crate, I was able to do that. Now, if you have a larger size that you're doing, you may not be able to get away with using the same fabric and you may have to double up using another knit fabric. Now, that being said, I also got a second colorway of fabric, which wasn't included in my box and came separately, and it is a beautiful pink, and I'm excited to do this up. Now, when I do this up, I will share it with you guys. I will do the same bodice, but what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to create a full circle skirt bottom, and I think I'm going to pair it with the Ava circle skirt, which I will leave linked down below if any of you guys are interested in mashing these two patterns together, because with this A-line fit of the dress and how slinky this fabric is, I find that I get a little self-conscious, especially if I'm wearing this dress and I decide I want to eat a nice big dinner. I feel like you can just see everything. So with that circle skirt, it will create the ability to kind of really hide that tummy if you're looking at hiding any of those areas, because it will flow out away from the hips. It'll give a nice drape because it is such a slinky fabric, and I think that it will look really flattering. Plus, it's always fun to do a pattern mashup. Let me know which pattern mashup you would mash up with this pattern here. Would you keep the same bottom, maybe change up the top a little bit? I'm honestly really digging these beautiful sleeves here, so I'm of course going to keep the bodice and change up the bottom. But let me know what your thoughts are. Also, I would love to know what your favorite item from the crate was this month. And if you're interested in grabbing a crate of your own, I do have a discount code for you. It is SHEERSTITCHERY, and I will leave a link to where you can grab that crate down below. And if you haven't done so already, do consider subscribing. And until next time, makers, let's get our sewspiration on.